The B-17 climbs through scattered clouds at 4,000 feet over Suffolk, England. The date is August 12, 1944. Inside the cockpit, Lieutenant Joseph Kennedy, Jr., United States Navy, adjusts the autopilot trim. The bomber, stripped of all defensive armament, guns, oxygen systems, and most instruments, flies heavily. The reason proves simple. The fuselage and bomb bay contain 21,700 pounds of Torpex explosive, the most powerful conventional explosive available. Kennedy's aircraft represents not a bomber, but a manned missile. At 0558 hours, Kennedy reaches the arming panel. The procedure requires setting 21 individual arming switches in specific sequence. Any error could detonate the 21,700 pounds instantly. Kennedy has practiced this procedure dozens of times on the ground, in flight, with the aircraft vibrating and his hands sweating despite the cold. The task requires absolute concentration. At 0602 hours, Kennedy completes the arming sequence. All lights show green. The explosive, now fully armed, requires only the radio detonation signal to explode. Kennedy calls the mothership, AB-34, flying 3,000 yards behind. Taxi Squad 8-4 to Taxi Squad Able. Arming complete. All circuits green. Prepare for bailout. The plan calls for Kennedy and his co-pilot, Lieutenant Wilfred Willey, to bail out at 6,000 feet over Clacton-on-Sea. After bailout, the mothership's crew will assume radio control of the now pilotless bomber and guide it across the English Channel to the target, a massive concrete V-weapon bunker at Mimoyeki, France. The bunker, constructed with 15-foot thick reinforced concrete, resists conventional bombing. The 21,700 pounds of Torpex, delivered with precision through radio control, should penetrate and destroy it. At 0604 hours, Kennedy begins climbing to bailout altitude. The B-17 responds sluggishly to control inputs, the enormous explosive weight affecting handling. At 4,900 feet, observers on the ground at Blythburgh see a massive explosion. The B-17 disintegrates instantly. A fireball 400 feet in diameter consumes the aircraft. Debris rains across 10 square miles. Kennedy and Willey die instantly, vaporized in the explosion. The cause remains unknown. Theories include premature detonation from faulty arming switches, accidental radio signal triggering the explosive, structural failure causing the Torpex to detonate sympathetically, sabotage. Investigation finds no definitive answer. The aircraft and crew simply cease to exist. This mission, classified secret until 1972, represents one attempt in Operation Aphrodite, the American program to create remote-controlled explosive-laden bombers. To understand how the United States military developed kamikaze tactics using war-weary aircraft and volunteer crews, you must return to June 1944. The German V-weapon campaign begins June 13th with the first V-1 flying bomb strikes against London. The weapons, launched from sites in northern France, caused substantial civilian casualties. British intelligence identifies multiple heavily fortified launch sites and construction bunkers. Conventional bombing proves ineffective against the massive concrete structures. Some bunkers feature walls 20 feet thick, roofs 15 feet thick, all reinforced concrete designed to resist 5,000-pound bombs. The 8th Air Force attempts precision bombing using standard heavy bombers. The missions achieve minimal effect. B-17 formations drop hundreds of bombs on the Mimoyek site during July. Post-strike reconnaissance shows superficial damage only. The concrete structures, protected by earth berms and designed specifically to withstand aerial attack, resist all conventional ordnance. Major General James Doolittle, commanding 8th Air Force, seeks alternatives. His staff proposes Project Aphrodite, convert war-weary B-17s into unmanned flying bombs carrying massive explosive payloads. The concept envisions a pilot and co-pilot flying the loaded aircraft to altitude, arming the explosive, activating radio control equipment, then bailing out. A mothership crew would then guide the pilotless bomber to the target by radio control. The concept proves neither novel nor American in origin. The Germans experiment with similar systems using FW-190 fighters filled with explosives. The Italians employ radio-controlled explosive boats against shipping. The Japanese, by late 1944, implement organized kamikaze attacks using piloted aircraft. But Aphrodite represents the American attempt to combine remote control technology with massive explosive payloads. The program receives approval in July 1944. The 8th Air Force allocates war-weary B-17s, aircraft with excessive flight hours or combat damage, making them unsuitable for continued bombing missions. The Navy contributes PB-4Y-1 Liberators, their designation for the B-24, for similar conversion. Both services establish units to develop and execute Aphrodite missions. The conversion process strips the aircraft of all unnecessary equipment. Defensive armament comes out, turrets, gun mounts, ammunition, armor plate comes out, most instruments come out, oxygen systems come out. Radio equipment except the essential receiver for remote control comes out. Crew positions except pilot and co-pilot seal off. The aircraft becomes a shell designed to carry explosive and minimal control systems. The explosive loading requires careful calculation. Engineers determine the B-17 can carry approximately 21,000 pounds of Torpex while maintaining marginally adequate flying characteristics. Torpex, a British-developed explosive combining RDX, TNT, and aluminum powder, produces approximately 50% more blast effect than TNT. 21,000 pounds of Torpex equals approximately 31,500 pounds of TNT equivalent. Loading proves hazardous. Workers pack the Torpex in wooden crates filling the bomb bay and entire fuselage. The explosive, while relatively stable, requires careful handling. Static electricity, shock, or excessive heat could cause detonation. Loading one aircraft requires approximately 12 hours with crews working cautiously. The arming system employs electrical switches wired to detonators embedded in the Torpex. The pilot must set 21 switches in proper sequence to complete the arming circuit. Safety interlocks prevent accidental arming, but once armed, the explosive requires only a radio signal sent from the mothership to detonate. The system, tested extensively with dummy loads, proves reliable in ground testing. The radio control system adapts equipment from previous programs. The mothership transmits signals to the stripped-down bomber. These signals operate servos connected to the control surfaces. Elevator, rudder, ailerons. The mothership pilot, using a control stick and rudder pedals in his aircraft, flies the remote bomber as though sitting in its cockpit. Television cameras, a cutting-edge technology in 1944, mount in the stripped bomber's nose to transmit images to the mothership. The system works, marginally. Ground tests demonstrate successful radio control. Flight tests with unmanned drones show the concept functions, but reliability proves questionable. Radio interference disrupts signals. The television image quality proves poor. The remote pilot lacks the feel of actually flying the aircraft. Precision proves difficult. The volunteers recruit from experienced pilots willing to accept extraordinary risk. The missions require flying an aircraft loaded with 10 tons of explosive, arming it in flight, then bailing out at low altitude. Any mistake proves fatal. The explosive quantity ensures no survival if detonation occurs with the crew aboard. Lieutenant Joseph Kennedy, Jr., volunteers in July 1944. Kennedy, age 29, older brother of future President John F. Kennedy, serves as a Navy patrol bomber pilot. He completes his required 25 mission tour by June, but volunteers for additional duty. His motivation appears partly ambition, partly family competitive nature, partly genuine patriotism. He writes home that the mission, if successful, could shorten the war and save lives. Kennedy receives assignment to Special Attack Unit 1, the Navy component of Operation Aphrodite. The unit operates from RAF Fursfield in Norfolk. Using PB-4Y-1, Liberators converted to explosive carriers. Kennedy trains for 2 weeks learning the arming procedures, radio control systems, and bailout techniques. He flies 5 practice missions with dummy loads. On August 12th, Kennedy draws assignment for Mission Taxi Squad 8. The target? The Mimoyeki Bunker, a massive concrete structure housing a V-3 supergun complex. The gun, designed to bombard London from France, never becomes operational but remains a high-value target. Intelligence estimates the bunker resists conventional attack due to concrete walls 20 feet thick. Kennedy's aircraft, Bureau number 32271, undergoes final preparation August 11th. Crews load 21,700 pounds of Torpex. Ground checks verify all systems functional. The arming panel checks good. The radio control receiver checks good. The television cameras check good. The aircraft arms and readies for flight. The mission brief occurs August 12th at 0400 hours. Present. Kennedy. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Wilford Willey. The mothership crew. The squadron commander. Intelligence officers. And technical specialists. The brief covers weather, routing, arming procedures, bailout procedures, and radio control procedures. No one mentions the obvious risk. Everyone understands that sitting atop 21,700 pounds of armed explosive leaves no margin for error. Kennedy and Willey board the aircraft at 0518 hours. Pre-flight checks proceed normally. Engine start occurs at 0527. Taxi begins at 0133. Takeoff occurs at 0540 minutes from Furz Field's runway. The heavily loaded aircraft requires the entire runway length and barely clears the trees at the far end. The flight plan calls for climbing to 6,000 feet while flying northeast toward the coast. At 6,000 feet, Kennedy will arm the explosive. Then he and Willey will bail out over the designated drop zone near Clacton-on-Sea. The mothership will assume control and guide the aircraft across the channel to Mimoyex. At 0550 hours, Kennedy begins the arming sequence. The procedure, practiced dozens of times, should take approximately 4 minutes. Kennedy proceeds methodically, setting each switch in order. At 0558, he reports arming complete. At 0602 hours, he reports all circuits green and requests clearance for bailout. At 0604 hours, the aircraft explodes. The detonation, equivalent to approximately 32,000 pounds of TNT, occurs at 4,900 feet altitude over Blythebergs, Suffolk. Witnesses describe a brilliant flash followed by a massive fireball. The explosion, heard 30 miles away, shatters windows within 2 miles. Debris falls across a wide area. The largest piece recovered weighs approximately 40 pounds. Kennedy and Willey leave no recoverable remains. Investigation begins immediately. The board examines all available evidence, witness statements, recovered debris, technical records, similar incidents. The investigation identifies several possible causes, but reaches no definitive conclusion. Theory 1. Faulty arming switch causes premature detonation. The switches, manufactured to military specifications but operating under extreme conditions, might fail closed rather than open. Such failure could complete the detonation circuit unintentionally. Evidence. Several recovered fragments show signs of electrical failure. Counter-evidence. Extensive ground testing showed the switch is reliable. Theory 2. Radio signal from the mothership or other source accidentally triggers detonation. The radio frequency used for control overlaps with other military communications. A signal on the wrong frequency but sufficient amplitude might activate the detonation receiver. Evidence. The mothership transmitted routine communications shortly before the explosion. Counter-evidence. The detonation circuit required specific coded signals unlikely to occur accidentally. Theory 3. Structural failure causes sympathetic detonation. The heavily loaded aircraft, flying at low altitude with marginal structural integrity, might experience airframe failure. The sudden deceleration or impact between components could shock the torpex sufficiently to cause detonation. Evidence. Torpex, while stable, can detonate from severe shock. Counter-evidence. The aircraft flew normally until the explosion with no indication of structural problems. Theory 4. Sabotage. German intelligence, aware of Aphrodite operations, might have infiltrated saboteurs or developed techniques to trigger premature detonation. Evidence. German intelligence demonstrated sophistication in other areas. Counter-evidence. No evidence of sabotage or German involvement ever surfaces. The investigation concludes with findings that remain classified until 1972. The board finds that the aircraft suffered catastrophic structural failure and explosion from undetermined causes. The explosion occurred at approximately 0604 hours at an altitude of 4,900 feet. Both crew members died instantly. Contributing factors may include premature arming of explosive charges, accidental detonation from radio signals, structural failure of airframe, or other undetermined causes. The exact cause cannot be determined from available evidence. This inconclusive finding proves unsatisfying but realistic. The explosion vaporized the aircraft and destroyed most evidence. Recovered fragments prove insufficient for definitive analysis. The investigation does recommend several changes. improved arming switches, better radio frequency separation, structural reinforcement of explosive-laden aircraft, modified arming procedures. Operation Aphrodite continues despite Kennedy's death. The Army Air Forces fly additional missions through September. Results prove uniformly disappointing. Of 14 missions flown, none achieve successful target destruction. Several aircraft explode prematurely. Several crash before reaching targets. Several arrive at targets, but miss due to radio control problems. Several experience control system failures preventing attack entirely. One mission illustrates typical results. On August 4th, 8 days before Kennedy's death, a B-17 loaded with 20,000 pounds of explosive launches against a V-weapon site at Watton, France. The crew arms the explosive, bails out successfully, and the mothership assumes control. The mothership guides the aircraft across the channel and approaches the target. At 5 miles from target, the television image fails. The radio control continues functioning, but without visual reference. The mothership crew attempts dead reckoning guidance. The bomber impacts 3 miles from the target in an empty field. The explosion creates a crater 60 feet deep and 200 feet wide, but damages no military objectives. Another mission on August 6th targets Helgoland Island, fortified German naval base. 2 B-17s, each loaded with 21,000 pounds of explosive, launch in sequence. The first aircraft experiences radio control failure 30 minutes into the mission. The crew, still aboard attempting to restore control, decides to abort. They land the aircraft, still carrying armed explosive, at an emergency field. The landing proves successful, but ground crews refuse to approach the aircraft for 6 hours until explosive ordnance disposal teams render the explosive safe. The second aircraft completes the mission profile. Crew arms explosive, bails out, mothership assumes control, guides aircraft toward target. At 10 miles from Helgoland, German flak batteries engage the pilotless bomber. Multiple hits damage the airframe. The bomber enters a descending spiral, crashes into the sea 4 miles from Helgoland, explodes on impact. Reconnaissance shows no damage to military targets. These failures reflect fundamental problems with the Aphrodite concept. Radio control technology in 1944 lacks the precision required for accurate guidance. The television cameras provide poor image quality, especially at distance. The remote pilots lack the situational awareness of being physically in the aircraft. Weather, radio interference, and German countermeasures degrade performance. The massive explosive payload, while destructive, proves useless if the aircraft cannot reach the target precisely. Additionally, the targets themselves prove more resilient than anticipated. The V-weapon bunkers, while eventually destroyed, require multiple attacks with conventional bombs rather than single Aphrodite missions. The concrete structures resist even direct hits from 20,000-pound explosive impacts unless the aircraft penetrates the structure before detonating. The human cost proves disproportionate to results. Kennedy and Willie die in the August 12th explosion. Lieutenant Fane Poole and Staff Sergeant Philip Enterline die August 4th when their B-17 explodes during pre-flight checks, detonating 20,000 pounds of TNT while still on the ground. The explosion destroys the aircraft, kills the crew instantly, and creates a crater 90 feet in diameter at RAF Fursfield. Several crew members survive bailouts but suffer injuries. Bailout at 6,000 feet provides minimal altitude for parachute deployment. Some crew members experience hard landings causing broken bones or internal injuries. One pilot, Lieutenant John Fisher, bails out successfully but his parachute malfunctions. He falls 3,000 feet before the reserve chute deploys, suffering severe spinal injuries that leave him partially paralyzed. Total Operation Aphrodite casualties: 4 killed in explosions, 3 killed in crashes, 7 injured in bailouts or crashes. Against these casualties, 0 confirmed successful target destructions. The operational failure proves complete. The program terminates in October 1944. The official reason: improved conventional bombing techniques achieve better results at lower risk. The actual reasons include technological limitations, excessive casualty rates, and changing strategic situation. By October, Allied forces advance into France, overrunning most V-weapon sites. The urgent need to destroy the bunkers diminishes as ground forces capture them intact. The Navy component, Special Attack Unit 1, disbands in October. Surviving personnel transferred to other duties. The PB-4Y-1s, stripped of their explosive loads, either scrap or return to conventional service. The unit's records remain classified. The Army Air Force component continues slightly longer, conducting final missions in October. The last mission, flown October 15, targets a German submarine pen at Heligoland. The mission fails when the mothership loses radio contact with the drone after bailout. The pilotless bomber crashes into the North Sea. The program officially terminates October 20th. Post-war analysis proves harsh. The official Army Air Force's history states, Project Aphrodite represented an innovative attempt to employ war-weary aircraft and new technology against hardened targets. The concept proved technologically immature for operational employment. Radio control systems lacked the reliability and precision required. The risk to volunteer crews exceeded acceptable levels for the minimal results achieved. The project should have remained in development until technology matured sufficiently for safe and effective operations. The Navy's assessment proves equally critical. Operation Aphrodite Navy demonstrated courage and technical innovation, but failed to achieve military objectives. The loss of Lieutenant Kennedy and Lieutenant Willey, experienced pilots whose continued service would have provided value in other capacities, represents waste of trained personnel for negligible military gain. Future operations employing similar concepts should ensure technology reaches maturity before committing crews to operational missions. These assessments, written with benefit of hindsight, miss the context. In July and August 1944, the V-weapon threat appeared serious. The bunkers resisted conventional attack. Innovative solutions seemed necessary. The concept of unmanned bombers delivering massive explosive payloads addressed a real operational problem. That the execution proved premature doesn't invalidate the concept entirely. Indeed, modern weapon systems employ similar concepts. Cruise missiles represent direct descendants of the Aphrodite concept. Unmanned aircraft carrying explosive payloads to targets via remote guidance. The technological limitations that doomed Aphrodite, primitive radio control and poor targeting accuracy, have been solved through GPS navigation, sophisticated guidance systems, and advanced explosives. The modern BGM-109 Tomahawk cruise missile accomplishes precisely what Aphrodite attempted: unmanned delivery of explosive payloads against hardened targets. But the difference proves critical. Cruise missiles employ no suicide crews. The aircraft themselves are unmanned from launch to impact. Aphrodite required pilots to fly explosive-laden aircraft, arm them in flight, then bail out hoping the bailout succeeded and the aircraft reached its target. The human element, both operationally necessary in 1944 and ethically problematic, distinguished Aphrodite from truly unmanned systems. The kamikaze comparison proves inevitable but imprecise. Japanese kamikaze pilots flew their aircraft deliberately into targets, dying to ensure accuracy. Aphrodite pilots flew their aircraft to points near targets, then bailed out hoping to survive while their aircraft continued to target. The intention differed. Kamikaze pilots accepted certain death. Aphrodite pilots accepted high risk hoping to survive. The result often proved similar: death of the pilot, failure to destroy the target. The ethical questions surrounding Aphrodite remained largely unexamined during the war. Volunteers understood the risks and accepted them. Military necessity seemed to justify hazardous missions. Post-war, the ethics received more scrutiny. Should military commanders approve missions with casualty rates exceeding 50% when alternatives exist? Should volunteers be permitted to accept missions almost certain to prove fatal? Where lies the boundary between acceptable military risk and suicide missions? Aphrodite operated in ethical gray area. The missions proved dangerous but not suicidal. Crews expected to survive bailouts. That several died reflects the reality that expectations and outcomes sometimes diverge. Kennedy expected to bail out successfully, as training flights demonstrated feasibility. His death resulted from premature explosion, not an inevitable outcome of the mission design. But the mission design itself incorporated fatal risks. Flying an aircraft containing 21,700 pounds of armed explosive left zero margin for error. Any malfunction, any mistake, any unexpected event could prove instantly fatal. Kennedy accepted these risks voluntarily, but his acceptance doesn't eliminate the ethical question of whether commanders should have approved such missions. The family impact proved substantial. Joseph Kennedy Sr., the family patriarch and former ambassador to Britain, grieves his eldest son's death deeply. The loss affects family dynamics profoundly. John F. Kennedy, the second son, becomes the family's political hope. The pressure and expectations previously focused on Joseph Jr. transfer to John. Whether this affects John's later political career remains speculative, but the family itself believes Joseph's death changed their trajectory. Rose Kennedy, the mother, maintains that Joseph died performing his duty courageously. She frames the death as honorable sacrifice for worthy objectives, but private correspondence suggests profound grief and questioning whether the mission justified the risk. One letter to a friend, written 1946, states, "Joe was so brave, so willing to serve, but I wonder if his commanders appreciated the danger they asked him to accept. 21,000 pounds of explosive. Even thinking about it now terrifies me." Lieutenant Wilford Willie's family receives less public attention, but experiences equivalent grief. Willie, age 26, leaves behind a wife and infant daughter he never meets. She is born 3 weeks after his death. The Navy provides widow's benefits, but no amount of financial support replaces a father. Willie's widow, remarried by 1948, rarely speaks publicly about her first husband. One interview in 1967 includes her statement, "Willie believed in the mission. He thought they could destroy that bunker and save lives. He died trying. I'm proud of what he attempted. I just wish the technology had been ready." The technical specialists involved in Aphrodite faced difficult reckoning. They developed systems they believed functional. Testing showed the concept worked. But operational reality revealed limitations testing failed to expose. Major Henry Rand, the Army Air Forces officer overseeing Aphrodite technical development, later writes, "We thought we had solved the problems. Ground tests succeeded. Flight tests succeeded. But operational conditions introduced factors we hadn't anticipated. Radio interference, weather, combat damage. The systems that worked in controlled tests failed under operational stress. We should have done more testing before committing crews. Kennedy's death and the others weigh on me. The recovered debris from Kennedy's explosion receives detailed examination. Engineers hope to identify the failure mode, preventing future occurrences. But the debris proves too fragmentary for definitive conclusions. The largest intact pieces measure approximately 12 inches by 8 inches. Most fragments measure 3 inches or smaller. Explosive force this severe destroys evidence. One finding does emerge. Several recovered electrical components show signs of arcing or short circuits. Whether these failures occurred before, during, or after the explosion remains unknown. But the evidence suggests electrical problems contributed to or caused the detonation. Post-Aphrodite electrical systems receive improved shielding and redundancy. The program's classification until 1972 reflects several factors. The technical details, particularly radio control systems, remain classified as potentially useful for future weapons development. The operational failures, embarrassing to military leadership, warrant discretion. The Kennedy family connection adds political sensitivity. Joseph Jr.'s death, heroic in one framing, represents waste in another. Public debate about which framing applies seems undesirable to authorities. The 1972 declassification occurs gradually and incompletely. Some documents released publicly, others remain classified for various stated reasons: protecting intelligence sources, preserving technical secrets, respecting family privacy. Full declassification occurs only in 2008, 64 years after the events. The public reaction to declassification proves muted. By 1972, Vietnam War protests and Watergate dominate public attention. A failed World War II program killing 4 men generates minimal interest. Kennedy family members decline extensive comment. John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963 makes questions about his brother's death feel intrusive. Historical analysis develops slowly. Initial assessments focus on technical failures and operational lessons. Later analysis examines ethical dimensions and family impacts. Current scholarship tends toward balanced assessment. Aphrodite represented innovative attempt to solve real operational problem, but employed immature technology with unacceptable human costs for minimal military gain. The comparison to German and Japanese suicide weapons proves instructive. Germany's missile program, combining fighters with explosive-laden bombers in similar fashion to Aphrodite, achieves similarly poor results. Japan's kamikaze attacks, employing thousands of pilots in deliberate suicide missions, achieve tactical successes but fail strategically. All three programs share characteristics: desperation, technological limitations, willingness to accept extreme human costs, ultimate failure to achieve strategic objectives. The volunteers who flew Aphrodite missions deserve recognition for courage regardless of operational outcomes. They accepted extraordinary risks attempting missions their superiors believed worthwhile. Kennedy, Willie, Poole, Enterline, and others who died represent willing sacrifice for perceived military necessity. That the necessity proved less urgent than believed and the missions proved less effective than hoped doesn't diminish individual courage. The technological legacy persists. Cruise missiles, drones, and unmanned combat aerial vehicles descend directly from Aphrodite's conceptual framework. The problems Aphrodite encountered, guidance accuracy and reliable remote control, have been solved through decades of development. Modern systems accomplish what Aphrodite attempted with none of the human cost, but the human element cannot be engineered away from historical memory. Lieutenant Joseph Kennedy, Jr., age 29, died at 0604 hours, August 12, 1944, when his explosive-laden bomber detonated prematurely over Suffolk, England. He died attempting an innovative mission that military leadership believed necessary. The mission failed. The program failed, but Kennedy's willingness to volunteer, to train extensively, to accept extraordinary risk, represents individual courage worthy of remembrance. The B-17, Bureau number 32271, existed for 17 months from manufacture to destruction. It flew approximately 120 missions as conventional bomber before conversion to Aphrodite configuration. It carried crews safely through flak and fighters over Germany dozens of times. Its final flight lasted 15 minutes, carrying 2 men and 21,700 pounds of explosive, ending in fireball visible for 20 miles. The crater at Blythburgh, where the debris fell, measures approximately 100 feet in diameter and 30 feet deep. The crater filled with water naturally, becoming a pond. Local residents called it Kennedy's Pool for decades after. The area today shows no visible signs of the explosion. The pond remains, but connection to historical events faded from local memory. A memorial, erected by the local council in 1989, marks the approximate location. The inscription reads, "Near this spot on August 12, 1944, Lieutenant Joseph P. Kennedy, Jr., USN, and Lieutenant Wilford J. Willie, USN, gave their lives in the service of their country. Their sacrifice and courage are remembered with gratitude." The memorial receives few visitors. Most passing motorists remain unaware of its significance. Operation Aphrodite existed briefly, failed completely, and faded into classified obscurity for decades. The program attempted innovative solution to difficult operational problem. The technology proved premature. The human costs proved high. The military results proved negligible. The lessons, eventually absorbed into weapons development programs, contributed to modern unmanned systems. The men who volunteered, particularly those who died, deserve remembrance beyond their role in failed program. Kennedy's death affected American politics through family dynamics. Willie left widow and infant daughter. Poole and Enterline died before their missions launched. All accepted extraordinary risk, attempting missions they believed worthwhile. Whether the missions justified the risks remains debatable. The V-weapon bunkers, targeted by Aphrodite, eventually fell to conventional attack or Allied advance. The urgency perceived in July and August 1944 proved less absolute than believed. But decisions made under pressure with incomplete information cannot be fairly judged by hindsight, revealing the full picture. Operation Aphrodite represents a moment when American military, facing perceived urgent threat, attempted innovative solution, employing volunteer crews in extremely hazardous missions. The attempt failed. The technology proved immature. 4 men died. No target suffered destruction. The program terminated. But the attempt itself illuminates how militaries respond to challenges. Innovation, courage, acceptance of risk, willingness to try unproven concepts when conventional approaches fail. These characteristics, while producing failure in Aphrodite, underlie successful military innovation throughout history. Aphrodite failed. Other innovative programs succeeded. The difference often proves thin. Lieutenant Kennedy's last transmission, "Arming complete, all circuits green, prepare for bailout," represents his final words. 2 minutes later, he died. He believed the mission necessary. He accepted the risk. He performed the procedures correctly. The aircraft exploded anyway. Such proves the arbitrary nature of fate in military operations. The secret U.S. plan to use kamikaze remote-controlled bombers existed. It employed volunteer crews. It achieved no military successes. It killed 4 men. It remained classified for decades. It deserves remembering not for what it accomplished, but for what it attempted and what it cost. Operation Aphrodite. Courage. Innovation. Failure. Sacrifice. Obscurity. History preserves the record even as memory fades.